Hey guys, it's Tom here from Pro Direct Running, and in this video we're going to be giving you a first run impression and detailed look at the all new HOKA Clifton 9. Now, to backtrack a little bit before we get into the juicy stuff, the Clifton lineup is obviously an incredibly iconic range in the daily trainer lineup for HOKA. So much so, in fact, that the original Clifton 1 was re-released a few years ago due to popular demand. It's always been held in really high regard thanks to HOKA's Meta Rocker geometry, giving you a really nice smooth ride, as well as being fairly lightweight and incredibly durable. Just the same as any running shoe that's worth its weight in gold, there have obviously been a few bumps along the way, but I'm here today to tell you that the Clifton 9 might just be the best Clifton yet. Before we dive into some of the key stats and features that you can find on the new Clifton, if you're looking forward to today's video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, drop us a like and turn your bell notifications on so you're notified every time we release shoe review content just like this. First things first, probably the best thing about the Clifton is the fact that we've got an increase in stack height of about 3mm, but we've also got a reduction in weight. When it comes to stack height then, we're looking at a revised 32mm in the heel and 27mm in the forefoot for a 5mm drop. On the scales, a men's sample size is coming in at about 248 grams, with a women's sample size at about 205 grams, which really is a lovely sweet spot for a versatile daily trainer. It's light enough to easily consider being able to do some speed sessions and tempo work in the shoe, whilst also having all of the added comfort that you'd expect from a daily trainer. Technically, we do still have the same compression molded EVA midsole as found on previous versions of the Clifton. However, the guys at HOKA have done some kind of wizardry with the formulation, as it definitely feels softer to the touch, and that does indeed translate to underfoot feel as well, which we'll get to in a little bit. As you'd expect, we've still got the same early stage Meta Rocker geometry that HOKA are famous for, and in simple terms, it basically means if you're landing more towards the rear foot, you'll roll through really nicely to that toe off, but if you're landing more towards the midfoot, equally, you'll just get a nice, smooth transition through your gait cycle. The upper gets an update too, and it is now a quite significantly more breathable engineered knit. It feels nice to the touch, but it still feels luxurious and comfortable. The elf ear heel counter is still present, and this is essentially just to alleviate any pressure or contact points on the Achilles, but we've got a nice amount of plush cushioning all around the ankle here too. The tongue is gusseted, which means it sits really nicely on top of the foot, and it's a really nice level of thickness. It's not overdone to the point where it feels a bit cumbersome and clunky, but they also haven't made it too thin in an attempt to shave off those grams to the point where the laces apply pressure to the top of the foot. Now, the laces are probably a very overlooked part of most running shoes, but we've got a really nice amount of elasticity to them here, which does just make it a bit easier to achieve perfect lockdown. Now, we've spoken about the increased stack height of the midsole, we've spoken about the decrease in weight, but what we haven't spoken about yet is the increase in the rubber thickness on the outsole. One of the only real things you could probably say about some of the previous versions of the Clifton is that durability over the course of hundreds of miles might not have been quite up to scratch compared to other daily mileage shoes on the market. However, despite the configuration of this rubber outsole remaining pretty much the same when compared to the Clifton 8, it is definitely a little bit thicker, which should just aid with that durability. So to summarise the updates to the Clifton 9, we've got an increase of stack height by about 3mm and a softer formulation of the foam, an all new, even more breathable upper, and an increased amount of rubber thickness. Obviously, all of these stats and features and updates can sound great on paper, but the most important thing is how those updates translate to underfoot feel and on the run experience. So I took the Clifton 9 out this morning for a 10k progression run with some strides at the end. This is a very standard staple run in my weekly training, and it's also an incredibly good way to test running shoes as you get to see what they feel like at a variety of different paces, working down to about marathon pace by the end, and then obviously the strides at the end to really get the legs turning over and see what they've got at that faster clip. I almost always keep my watch covered for this kind of run and have it based off feel and effort rather than having a certain pace prescribed to it. And for me, that just gives an even truer test of the shoe, because if you're not feeling great, you're probably not going to be pushing the pace too much towards the latter stages of that run. But before we get carried away, let's talk about that initial step in feel, that initial comfort that you get with the Clifton 9. Now, as a little disclaimer for context's sake, I should say that my feet are quite flat and my left foot is flatter than my right. And I've never had any issues with HOKA shoes, but I can definitely feel the arch on the left side more so than the right, and that was true with the Clifton 9 as well upon lacing them up for the first time. But I should also point out that this was by no means troublesome, it wasn't uncomfortable, just very subtly noticeable, so something that I feel is worth mentioning for the sake of transparency. That aside, I went for the Clifton 9 in my usual UK 8.5 and found them to be perfectly true to size. I had a really nice amount of wiggle room in the toe box when it comes to both length and volume. As I said earlier in the video, I really like the tongue on the Clifton 9. It doesn't feel overdone in any way, and it just sits beautifully on top of the foot. And when lacing them up, I didn't have to fiddle. I didn't have to lace them up twice or 3 times like I do sometimes with other shoes. It was just a lace them up once and then forget about them. I traditionally do tend to prefer a heel counter which has a bit of contact on the Achilles. I don't know why, it just feels like a little bit of added security. However, I was still able to get really nice lockdown with the Clifton 9 and felt nicely secure in that heel counter. So overall, as far as first impressions are concerned, I was very optimistic about the Clifton 9. On the run itself, I started off nice and easy, about 440 per K, which is my standard easy day recovery day pace, and worked through the gears based off feel and got down to about 330s by the end. I must admit, I wasn't necessarily expecting the Clifton 9 to be my go-to choice for a run of this nature, but I've got to say I was incredibly impressed by how it performed from start to finish today. I tend to land more midfoot to forefoot, and when jogging along nice and easy, it was really pleasantly soft underfoot without feeling mushy at all. But what surprised me the most is the fact that once I did start picking up the pace, which is where I thought maybe the Clifton would struggle, is actually where I started to enjoy the shoe even more. Because of its relative lightweight and thanks to that Meta Rocker geometry, I found that picking up the pace was actually fairly effortless in the Clifton 9 today, which, like I say, I didn't expect at the get-go. Now, you're definitely not getting that same max cush squishy feel that you get in shoes like the Nike Invincible or the New Balance More V4. However, I feel like this is a really well-balanced midsole that performs brilliantly at a variety of different paces. I finished the run feeling really good and honestly just excited to lace up the Clifton 9 and get more miles in them. However, the only area where they maybe didn't excel was on the strides after the run. This is not a slight on the Clifton 9 at all, but when you're doing 4x100 meter strides at the end of a run, having something that little bit lighter and that little bit more fit for purpose is definitely going to perform better than what is traditionally a daily trainer. So ultimately, as someone like myself who hasn't worn the Clifton since the 5th iteration, I was remarkably impressed by how great it felt. We'll always talk about the hallmark of a really quality daily trainer being one that you can lace up and almost forget about on the run, and the Clifton 9 definitely ticked that box for me. If you're one of those people who loves your Cliftons, then I think you're really going to enjoy the updates that we've got here. And equally, if on the opposite side of the spectrum you have never worn a HOKA shoe before, I think the Clifton 9 has gone to the very top of my list of shoes that I'd recommend from HOKA. Now, naturally, I can't talk to the durability of the Clifton 9, having only logged about 9 miles in my pair, but I do hope that that increased thickness in rubber coverage on the outsole does lead to just getting a couple hundred extra miles out of the shoe. And so there we go, that's going to do it for our first impression and first look at the HOKA Clifton 9. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to drop us a like, subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on so you never miss a future upload. And as always, let me know what you think of the updates to the Clifton 9 in the comments down below. You know the drill, if you're looking to get your feet in a pair of the all-new HOKA Clifton 9, you can do so right now at Pro Direct Running.